today, well, this evening, this is a public meeting to kind of talk about the services that are being provided to our families and students here in the city of Holyoke. We are currently being broadcast on Facebook Live, the public access channel, and Boxcast. So along the way, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to send your questions and we will answer them as quickly as we can. We do have a lot of information that's going to be provided this evening. Everything will be translated by the Holyoke Public Schools within the next 72 hours. Our participants this evening is our current superintendent and receiver, Dr. Steven Zreich. We have also the Chief Finance and Operations, Anthony Soto. School Committee at-large member, Devin Sheehan, and myself. As you all know, we are all in an unprecedented times dealing with COVID-19, also known as coronavirus. We are currently, as you can see, the cameras went to different locations because we are practicing social distancing. So we did measure, make sure we are 6 feet or more away from each other. So the cameras, you will see that it will go to specific people in their specific spots. So the reason why we're here tonight is because we're going to provide information for families and our community members and how they can find resources during these difficult times. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to start sending them so that we can hopefully address them this evening. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Dr. Steven Zreich.
Thank you. It's certainly unusual to be communicating to folks this way, but thank you to our team that's allowed us to do this on Facebook Live and live stream. I want to take a moment to thank our students, staff, and families for their amazing flexibility, patience, and resilience during this most challenging and as Mildred said, the most unprecedented of times. In particular, our staff in a matter of days responded with urgency and took quick action, and in a matter of hours and days when they were alerted to a long-term school closure. Students were sent home with work for at least the first week of school, and since our doors closed last Friday, our educators have been in regular communication with our families and students to provide more assignments, check in on student well-being, and offering ideas for students to keep their minds and bodies active. A special shout out to our custodians, food service workers, and our nurses who have been on the front lines of this pandemic, handing out medication, serving food, and extensively cleaning and disinfecting our buildings over the last few days and weeks. So I want to provide a few updates here tonight. Mr. Soto's with me specifically to talk about food and some of our technology efforts, but we definitely want to take questions from people as this live stream and Facebook Live rolls out here tonight. So a few things I wanted to share. While we have some staff working at our food service sites, our buildings and offices are closed to allow for deep cleaning and for the protection of our staff. We do, of course, understand that our families will have questions during this period of closure. And so we ask that families begin by reading our frequently asked questions, which are on our website. We've sent them out a few times. But if one of your questions is not answered by this document, families and community members can contact us via a hotline that we've established during our closure. During school hours, you can text or call in English, if you want an English speaker, 413-561-0862. And if you want a Spanish speaker, 413-314-3560. Or you can send an email via our Contact Us form, which is on the district website. And we promise to respond to your questions within 1 business day. I did want Anthony Soto, who's our Chief of Operations and Finance, to give an update on our food service work and the efforts we've made to try to feed as many students and families as we can during these unusual times.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you to everybody watching. As Dr. Drake mentioned, I'll be giving a quick update as to our efforts to feed as many families as we can. Um, Through our federal nutrition program, uh, everything has been evolving really quickly. I want to thank Desi for getting us information quickly as well, that would allow us to ensure that we can roll out this feeding program as quickly and effectively as possible. To date, we have been feeding. We've been averaging around 850 meals per day. We started this food service feeding site program. We have a feeding site at Donahue, one at Holyoke High, one at Kelly, one at Lawrence, one at Sullivan. Those are the 5 sites that we have. So our strongest day was yesterday, where we served 932 meals, and our second was today, where we served 892 meals. So between the hours of 8:30 and 12:30, school-age children were able to come to any one of our sites and pick up both a breakfast and a lunch at the same time. And we're hoping that this was helpful to all of the families that were able to come. We tried to place these sites strategically in areas where we thought there were great needs. And I want to say I'm happy to announce that we will be expanding to an additional site of Morgan, so that we can make sure we serve some of our neediest population in the South Holyoke area. We will be changing our times. As I said, this has been evolving pretty quickly, and some of the recommendations that we've been hearing from the health professionals is that we should minimize the amount of time where we're having people congregate. So in an effort to do that, and after monitoring the peak times of when we're seeing a lot of meals being served, we're going to be consolidating the time span from 10 o'clock to 12:30, and that's being in addition to expanding to an additional site like Morgan, and that's being done for everybody's safety. We want to make sure that everybody feels safe, so we've established procedures in terms of being able to hand out meals to families. Please, I know our schools are closed, but that doesn't mean that our schools are not unsafe and that it's not unsafe to come and grab a meal. All of our staff are trained, and we have procedures in place to respect people's social distancing needs, and our process is such that allows that to continue to happen. We've also been handing out instructional materials at these food sites, so if I encourage anybody watching to get the word out. You know, we want to feed as many of our students as we can. I'm not sure. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this Friday, which is tomorrow, we will be sending additional meals home to cover Saturday and Sunday. So anyone going to any one of our food sites can pick up the meal for the day, which is the breakfast and the lunch, and an additional 4 meals, which should carry them through the weekend. And again, we want to get to as many families as we can. So we appreciate everyone that has come and taken the time to do that. And we hope to see you soon, and we hope to continue to provide this service to families.
Oh, question over here.
Yeah, really quickly. So 2 things. When you talked a little bit about during your peak times when you had a little bit more congregation happening than what should be, what measures have you put into place when you've seen that? Have you looked at curbside pickup? If they do come in a vehicle, just have them pull over to the side and someone brings it to them. Just if you can talk about that a little bit. And my other question is, I know that this is for HPS families, correct?
Yes.
What about our students that are out of district placement? Are they part of it? Are they keeping a name list of all of our students within the Holyoke Public Schools and those that have been placed into out of district?
So I'll answer the first one. So some of the procedures that we did put in place, and again, we learned over time. After monitoring the first day, we realized a lot of people were walking up to the door, touching the door, and we wanted to avoid that. So what we have done is we placed a table that is roughly 6 feet long. And again, this is not something that's just unique to Holyoke. If you look in other communities, that they're also recommending that this be done where there's no hand-to-hand contact with staff and or with families, just out of respect to them and to make sure that we're maintaining social distances. So set up a table in the front, and now no one is able to go to the door. We have signage. Try to make it as welcoming as possible, because it could feel a little harsh if you're going and there's this table that's separating you. But I want to assure families that the reason that's done is for safety. So that's what we have set up at every site. We haven't seen like a backlog line. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of. There's not like a line out the door. It's usually, one family at a time, a few students at a time. They come to the table. Our food service staff open the door, ask how many meals they need after seeing the children there, and then they put the required food on the table, and then the family takes it and they're on their way. We haven't seen a backlog or anything. It's been pretty sporadic.
And the other
Then on
question.
the out of district question, right now we're not going out of city lines to deliver meals. I know that a lot of our students that are out of district are in Springfield, and Springfield has food service centers as well.
I think she's asking about out-of-district placement students.
Oh.
So I think she's asking about
Special education.
yeah, any special education student. So the answer to that really is that any resident can take food. Any child, I should say, any child, even if they don't go to the Holyoke Public Schools, but they live in Holyoke, we will give them a meal.
Right.
Okay, great.
Correct.
Thank you.
And we don't check off names. It's good faith, and that they're a resident of Holyoke, and that they have children, that are also residents of the city.
Okay, Mr. Sheen,
I think
Kevin
what's
Sheehan?
important is that with what Drs. Reich and Mr. Soto said, that I think it's what other under either 18 or 23 is able
Right.
to receive a meal from the Holyoke Public Schools at many of the sites that have them. And as Ms. Lefebvre said, that we are practicing social distancing here, and many of you cannot see it, but we are very much spread out. And what's important is what that means. And many parents in our district are, we know there's challenges that when you have kids at home and when you are trying to provide childcare for your children at home or what you have. But it's important that you are not having sleepovers, you're not having youth gatherings, anything going on in your home, because we want to make sure that every individual within the city is kind of living on their own for the next few weeks. And that's the most important thing. So family units are living within them, and family units are staying together, because it defeats the purpose if there are sleepovers going on, if there are captain's practices with sports, if there's pickup basketball games, which is easy to go on within our communities. But we want to make sure that we are living a solitary life for the next few weeks to make sure that this COVID-19 is going away and that we are decreasing the spread of that. And those are the important things. So I'll ask, to Drs. Reich or Mr. Soto, what are we doing for our staff and our students to make sure that they are deterring the contact with other students, and how are we encouraging learning in the home?
I mean, I think I can get into what we're doing for at-home learning, so to encourage our students and their families to be able to engage in meaningful activities at home. But to Mr. Sheehan's point, it's critical that we do ask all our staff. We're not asking our staff to come in to work. We're not asking our students. We don't want our students coming together to congregate. We want folks to stay home and have enough activities and meaningful assignments to keep them busy and enriched during this period of time. We continue to try to send messaging about, even though we're not medical professionals, our head of health and wellness continues to help us send out information about hand washing practices, what social distancing actually means. And reminders to folks of what are some of the best practices that are preventative of the flu. and continuing to put out those public service announcements. I think we will continue to do that. You know, people are being inundated with information from all different places, but I think we certainly have a far-reaching audience in our families and students, and so we're trying to spread that message as well. In terms of the at-home learning, this is a good time for me to transition to talk that we did send a lot of work, like I said, home Friday, and parents came in on Monday when the buildings were open to pick up more work, and then at each feeding site we have extra work by grade band. Beginning next week, we're going to launch a newly designed website that was intended to be designed for our weather work or blizzard bags, but now we're repurposing it for at-home learning. And we will be posting new work and by school and by grade level at each school, a series of new work for students over the next 2 weeks. We are asking teachers to regularly share work on this site, but we're also asking teachers and educators, not just teachers, but our educators, to keep in touch, which they're already doing using the communication modes that our schools use, which are Class Dojo, Blooms, some use Class Tag, many phone calls are being made, Facebook posts, websites, emails. I mean, it's been extraordinary what I've seen, and we've gotten tremendous feedback from parents about the work that our educators are doing. So very grateful. Our overall philosophy with the work is consistent with the Department of Education's direction, that the work assigned is enrichment and reinforcement of skills. It is not intended to replicate school, and it may not be used for course grading of any kind, and no student is required to turn in work, or the work, again, will not be used to inform their grade. It's meant to be enrichment and extension of work that students have done thus far this year. Our schools are providing our technology team right now with lists of families and students that require internet access and or devices. Families have already been contacted and will continue to be contacted about whether they need a device or they need access. And we will be scheduling times with families next week to share devices or to provide them with devices that they can use, trying to limit to one per family. If a family needs a device but has not heard from their child's classroom teacher or from the school, they should be in contact with their child's teacher or school. Now remember, 2 of our schools have one-to-one devices, STEM and PEC, so those students already have devices at home. We are also in the process of designing academic and wellness care packages that will be available the week of March 30th, which will be right now tentatively the last week of our closure. And we will provide students with that will be hands-on learning materials, basic art supplies, games, books, and flashcards, that type of learning that they can bring home with them. We are also working on getting free access for families through Comcast and mobile hotspots to the internet. We think this is a great opportunity for our community to come together to provide our families with access that hopefully will extend beyond the closure. Now, this has proven to be a little trickier. We're working with the city. We're working with partners. So right now, we know many of our families don't have access. Well, we can help provide devices. We do know that for many of our families, the challenge will be the access to the internet. And the final thing we're doing around learning is we're also trying to launch learning for our staff. So while they've got many things on their plate while they're home, including caring for their own families, they're also reaching out to their students. Some staff have requested virtual professional development around communication with families during the times that we're during this period of school closure. So we're trying to set up opportunities for that as we speak. I do want to say something about special education. All special education staff will be available to support students and families while they're at home. So we expect the same from our English language learner teachers and our special education staff, and they've made the same efforts to reach out. And the work that we provide online will also include work assigned from special educators and from English learning staff.
Really quick,
Sure.
So,
Sheehan?
if we have students that attend schools at one of our many parochial schools in the city or one of the charter schools, are they also eligible to receive one of the breakfasts or lunch at one of our sites?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yep.
And can they just show up, or is there anything they need to provide?
They can just show up. We're not taking names. It's literally as long as you're a school age child, you'll be able to come get a meal. So we welcome all of those families. Any families that are in need, that have children that are school age, please come down to any one of our 5 centers.
VOC families, Head Start families, all welcome.
And is preschool still going on within our district? If I had a child that was attending one of the programs run by Valley Opportunity Council, are they still in school or are they out? And are there any services for them?
No, they're not our buildings are completely closed to the public. The only staff that we have available at our feeding sites are facility staff, cafeteria workers, and we always have at least 2 administrators on duty to support the handing out of instructional materials and just to make sure that the program is running smoothly. Dr. Zreich and I have also been every day going and hitting every single one of the sites in the morning to make sure that everything's going smoothly. So no programs are running in any of our school facilities. And any children that live in Holyoke and that can get to any one of our sites. I do want to add that we also have some families that haven't been able to get to some of our sites, and I think it's important to note that we recognize that, and we have great partners in our transportation vendors who have partnered with us, and the day we closed school, they were reaching out to us, letting us know, Anthony, we want to help. What can we do? So through our Kelly site, we've been able to deliver on average of 66 to 66 families that are either living in shelters or in areas that are away from any of our feeding sites, and they have trouble getting there. And we've been able to accommodate those needs. And we also have a backpack program that we run throughout the school year, and many families rely on us sending extra food home for the weekend. This is an area that we're working together right now as a team. We have the supplies, we have the ability to do that, and we're working on the distribution. So right now our team is in the process of trying to reach out and identify who those families are that have relied on those meals so we can pick that program back up next week.
And one thing that some people have asked me, we're very much probably in between third and fourth marking period at this point. What's going to happen? I mean, we're in this weird spot where grades are ending, grades are starting. What can students expect? And we know we're out of school until April 7th? It would be the next day of school. But what should students expect? What should parents expect? And what should graduating seniors expect of their record and of what they're going to do moving forward?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I don't know that we have all the answers right now, other than we hope to be back in school so we can resume learning. At the same time, we do understand that if it's extended, we're going to have to look at how we give credit to students for the work that they've already completed, and we may not be in a position to be able to grade anything beyond the point that we left school. I know one of the things I have received questions about is the report cards for K-5, which are supposed to go out Friday. The good news is the period closed before we left school, and teachers have been entering report card grades, and our special educators have been completing IEP progress reports. We're working on a solution to get those report cards to families and those IEP progress reports to families. And we should have guidance, or we should have information for families by the end of next week. As report cards were supposed to go out tomorrow, So we'll let them know what our plan is to distribute them, given the challenges we have with distribution right now because we're not in school. I do want to respond to a couple of other questions that have come up that I've heard. One of them is our employees being paid. Our employees will continue to be paid during the duration of the closure. All HPS employees will continue to be paid. I've gotten questions about will school reopen. So at this point, we're expected to reopen on Tuesday, April 7th, like all schools across the Commonwealth. And we have received no further guidance about whether this will be extended or not. And while we hope to resume classes, we're also preparing for the possibility of a longer closure until sometime in May, or as well as the possibility that we do not return to school at all. So as a district, we have to prepare for all those options in the event that we don't go back on April 7th. We've also been asked about MCAS testing. So MCAS testing has been delayed at this point, particularly since the grade 10 MCAS for high school was supposed to begin next week. And the window for grades 3 to 8, English Language Arts, was to open March 30th. And no official announcements have been made about the cancellation of MCAS. Although we do have a call with the commissioner tomorrow, we hope to get more clarity on what will happen with the MCAS moving forward. Folks have asked me about April vacation. At this point, we have no information about the status of April vacation. A lot will depend if we come back to school prior to the vacation week starting. But unfortunately, at this point, I have no guidance yet on what will happen with April vacation. The spring sports season right now has been delayed to April 27th. Students, as Mr. Sheehan said, are not permitted to participate in any pre-season activities, captain's practices, coaches' practices, and at this point, the season's scheduled to start on April 27th. All other activities during the 3-week closure have been postponed, including the high school musical. Like you, I'm hopeful that we can reschedule this amazing show sometime this spring, given the amount of work and effort that our students and our staff have put into the show. I'm also asked, we've gotten a lot of emails from seniors, and Dr. Mahoney put out, I know, a video to seniors on Instagram. At this point, we know seniors are anxious about end-of-the-year activities like graduation and prom. And we've received a lot of concerns about these events, and these are critical, important events in the lives of our students completing their education and finishing their many accomplishments in our school system. We're going to continue to monitor the advice we get from the Department of Education, the Governor's Office, and the CDC regarding large gatherings, and we'll keep you updated with any information that we might have. Of course, the last thing we want to do is cancel any of those events, which we know are signature in the lives of many of our young people. Those are my updates. I do want to turn it over to anybody, school committee members who have questions, as well as the public, if the public has any questions.
I see here.
We do. Okay, yep. Great.
I don't know if you have others, but I have 2 questions here. So
sure.
Going back to special education. In regards to PT, OT, and ST, so physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, how will you, the Holyoke Public Schools, be supporting special education students that require these services? That's number 1. Okay. And then the other second question is, will there be work or tools available as well for students from special education?
Yeah, so let me take the second question first. I mentioned before there will be work for students with who are receive special education services. If parents have particular questions about work, they can also reach out to the special education department directly. That we are providing that number as well. There'll be somebody who's available at all times in pupil services, and that number is their main number, 534-2000, extension 1201. And Ms. Courier, our chief, will be fielding questions that folks have, but we will be providing work for our special education students and our English language learning students as well. The questions about services. At this point, we are still waiting for guidance from the Department of Education around services. Clearly, not being in school, we can't provide those services. And we will, like any other district in the state, be looking at guidance about how to ensure, what we can do to make sure that we support the students with special needs as soon as we return back to school. And again, I'm hopeful that that's in 3 weeks, but if it's longer, we certainly will be providing more guidance and information to families. Again, I would encourage those families with specific questions to reach out to our special education department as well.
Great. According for the Holyoke Public Schools website, do we have any questions currently?
Judy, do you see anyone posting? Okay, no? Yep.
Right.
So how are we serving them the meals? Is that the question? How do we bring meals
so
to those?
Can I respond to that issue? I think Anthony started to touch upon it. We are receiving a number of requests in the last 2 days for families that are looking, who cannot get out to our sites but need meals. Our principals and teachers have been sharing that information with our Family and Community Engagement Department, and we are now collecting those names, and we're hopeful that very soon we can then provide a service so that they do get meals. We are delivering right now to some shelters and to some specific families that have requested that information or requested meals. And we do ask if a family is concerned about their ability to get food, that they reach out to their child's school, the principal, teacher, and we'll be sure to give you to provide assistance to you. I am also concerned about our students' ability to be active, to get out of the house. To Mr. Sheehan's point, right now we want everybody to stay home. As we get more and more guidance, I am speaking regularly with the Boys and Girls Club, and tomorrow there'll be a call with all the community agencies in Holyoke to begin thinking about what if guidance changes, how can we provide some child care? How can we provide opportunities for activity for students? But it is right now, it's very challenging, and everything that I read suggests that the next period of time is going to be even more acute, and there's going to be a need to be even more restrictive. But we'll certainly monitor that and understand that not only can kids not go to school, but they don't have access to some of the places in the community, like Homework House, YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, sports, other activities that they participate in. And obviously that's very concerning to us, not just the academics, but it's all the enrichment and learning and activity that students have, especially as the weather gets nicer. I do not.
I'm
I don't
not
see
sure
any
if there
questions.
were other questions, but I know some individuals that were on the Facebook Live. It's hard for them to understand exactly what we're talking about. They might understand a few pieces,
Right.
again, because this is not being translated. So I don't know if you have a paper there that you had written a speech. Maybe you can do a little bit of your work in Spanish and
Well, I
putting
think
you on the spot.
I don't know if I'm going to do my on the spot in Spanish, but I do think we can get it translated, and we'll put it in our next. We're trying, as you know, to communicate to families pretty regularly, and so we can put a link to this for families. Yes.
There is one question. So I'm looking through the questions, and there's someone said, "What happened to the process in regards the letter of interest in regards the middle school?"
Oh,
And I'm going to take that as
Sure.
a question regarding the middle school project. And the Mass School Building Authority has said that they're going to extend out the process until May to approve the statements of interest. I think it's mid-May 8th or so. I think they pushed that out to, with what that would be for that. And there's another comment here. Ms. Lefebvre, is this? Okay. It was in Spanish, and I couldn't read that, but you got
I see it here.
that one. So as far as the statement of interest question, it is something we're working on, and the administration will work with the City Council President McGee, the city councilors, if we need to have an approval of a statement of interest for a potential building project with that. So, and as Dr. Zreik had mentioned, the central office is on a very much reduced staff if there are people needed. So if someone has or this time moving into April vacation, after April vacation, there's a number of families who start to think about preschool and kindergarten. Is there anything the district is doing to adjust those schedules for the 2020-2021 calendar for registrations for preschool and kindergarten?
Yeah, so all our registrations right now are already up, and they have been up even prior to the closure. I think we received a number of applications. The first round of applications for dual language had already closed. But we will continue to work with families, especially if we can get more accessibility and devices out to families to help those that have not enrolled to register for kindergarten. And we will encourage schools to send that message out to families. But we've already taken a number of applications thus far, and since our process starts much earlier than it used to, but we will need to get the word out to families that the window is open. And even though the central office is not open, everybody is working from home and is available to assist families with any questions around the enrollment process, not just for pre-K and K, but also enrolling in some of our middle school options. There's also the application process to Dean. And so we're going to have to look at that process because we began the interview process. I'm not sure we got through all the interviews, so we may have to do some online interviews with students because that's part of the process. So these raises a lot of good questions. That's why we want our community to be as mobile and have as much accessibility as possible. And that's where we'd love to get as much help from all of the public to get devices and access to our families so that we can continue as much of the work as we can.
And then, so say someone who's a parent of a 10th grader. I know MCAS was supposed to start
right.
on Monday or so, I think, for some of our 10th grade families for ELA. What's going to happen with the 10th grade MCAS for English Language Arts for many of our students? Do we know yet? Are they taking it another time? Do they not have to take it?
Yeah, we don't know yet. And the 10th graders, it does loom large as an assessment, as you know. That is the first time they take the ELA and the math assessment. So we don't know. The good news is they do have there's multiple opportunities along their career to take that assessment. They get at least 5 or 6 opportunities to take the MCAS. So I would imagine that they won't be penalized, and they'll have the same amount of opportunities to pass as any student did in any other year.
And then we also have lots of students who are finishing up student teaching. They're graduating from college. I mean, should people continue to apply for teaching positions in the Hoyok Public Schools? And should they continue to look towards September as starting classrooms and becoming new teachers? Or do we have a pause on that? And what's the process for new applicants?
Yeah, so we're taking applications. We've opened up our positions. Many of them are generic. But but some we know are. We do know about retirements. We know about teachers who may be moving on to another location. So our principals are interviewing, and we've encouraged our school leaders to do so during this time of closure with Zoom, Google Hangouts, and I do know that our school leaders are in fact interviewing people. So we do want folks to apply. Might be a good time for those folks probably have a lot more time in their schedule to be available for interviews, and our school principals do as well. So we want to make sure that we don't expect that to change, except that the interview won't be in person.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So I understand that we may be returning back on April 7th, okay? Now, when originally the social distancing was then they didn't want more than 250 people in a gathering, right? Then it moved down to 25, and at that time when it was 250, the governor did not include schools as part of that. Even though a school may have 1,000 students in it, right? You don't have 1,000 in one central location. In his understanding, you might have 20 in this classroom plus a teacher. So you were never going to have 250 at one time in one central location. Now, if schools do go back, sometimes I feel like you might have to think about, okay, if we're still limited to 25 per group, then how will that affect us in regards to the schools? You cannot have more than 25 in one location. Are we thinking beyond and already thinking of plan A, plan B if these things happen? I know that for us in the healthcare field, we're taking temperatures of people. Is that something realistic that our schools can do, that as students are coming in, we're taking temps? Not just the students, but also your staff.
Right. Yeah, I think this is obviously unprecedented times and something that we could never have envisioned. I do think that's why schools closed before the governor had ordered them to be closed, because they were concerned about some of the guidance around large gatherings, and we have large gatherings in cafeterias, in hallways, especially at our larger schools. And so I would hope that if we do return on April 7th, that it's done, that in doing so that we've taken every step to make sure that our students and staff are healthy, or that are kept healthy and safe, and that we're given guidance about what that should look like in an organization, an institution where by definition, right, or by the way we're organized, is a lot of people congregate together often, and so I would expect that we would get guidance prior to returning back to school. So, yeah, I hope that there's a lot more clarity prior to April 7th if we do return on April 7th.
Okay.
So we left a large opportunity for people to ask questions. I don't think we have any new additional questions with that. And I will say, if it comes up, they can call the school department offices, and there's someone still there to answer at 534-2000. And you can select the right person, but there's always someone working, depending on the extension that you pick, whether they're working from home or in the office, but there's someone to answer your calls. And I think that we have gone through a lot of the issues that are out there, and I would encourage people to look at the HPS website or Facebook page to find out where the locations are for food with that, and that the notes of this meeting will be translated in the next couple days, so people know where to find them. But it's important to know that you are staying safe during these days of social distancing and during the virus, and that we are all living this as a day-by-day basis, not knowing what is going to happen or what we're going to need to do with this. And I think that we're about to end this broadcast, is there any questions that Ms. Lefebvre?
So I'm just going to clarify on the numbers that you can text.
Oh, did I get the number wrong? Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be for English, you're going to call 413-561-0862. And then for Spanish, you're going to call 413-314-3560. Text your message, text your concerns, someone will get back in touch with you.
And most importantly, if you are having any medical issues, you should be consulting your doctor. You should be consulting the professionals at Hoyok Medical Center or the Board of Health. That is paramount with that. So don't let any medical issue or concern go unnoted, and consult with those people, because we are in a time when we need to be talking about that and be open with that. So I think that it's a great time that we brought Drs. Reich and Mr. Soto together to talk about these concerns, and it's about our students. And hopefully we are back in session on April 8th.
April 7th.
April 7th. April 7th.
Yes, and the phone. Thank you for sharing the phones. I entered the numbers in the chat here for the Facebook Live. Also, the special education number I added in here as well.
Okay.
We are keeping trackers of every call to make sure that the right person has responded to whatever concern or question you have. I would just add that I'd love to, if all things do change by the moment, but if we're able, I'd love to do something like this toward the end of next week as well to update the community and get questions. And if we could do it weekly for the period of the closure, I would appreciate doing that, as long as we're given the clearance to do that and it's safe and healthy to do so. And I want to echo the importance of, this is not a time for play dates. It's not a time for parties. It's not a time for get-togethers. It's a time to be at home with your family, get to know your family, get back in touch with, everybody needs to get back in touch with their families. And I wish you all a safe and happy and productive week in the Holyoke Public Schools community. Have a great night.
And just want to remind everyone, frequent hand washing. Encourage the kids when they come in, wash your hands. Okay. Good night, everyone.
And,
wait.
and also, more important, so the Holyoke Public Library is closed, but you can still go on their website and find e-books on their website, download books, visit the Holyoke Public Library website to get those. Even though they're closed, there are still resources fully available on the Holyoke Public Schools website, or Holyoke Public Library website, which I think you can actually find from the Holyoke Public Schools. But the Holyoke Public Library has a great resources for students and families.
Thank you and good night.